Last year, Walmart cleared $2.1 billion in global advertising revenue, making them the fourth largest ad platform in the entire world. Today, nearly a third of US consumers begin their product search on Walmart.com. However, a ton of brands struggle to manage their advertising strategy and budgets. So if you need help growing your Walmart business, click the link below to schedule a free demo of Downstream today. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Jake Zaratsian, and today I'm here with Connor Foley, General Manager and Co-founder of Downstream by Jungle Scout. Connor, thanks for being here.
Hi there, thanks for having me.
Today, Connor's going to be giving us his top strategies for advertising on Walmart in 2022, as well as his boldest predictions for advertising on the platform. All right, Connor, I wanted to start off today with getting into some pretty big news on Walmart. So they recently announced that they're switching from a first price bid auction to a second price bid auction. How do you believe that will impact the way advertisers advertise on the platform?
Yeah, good question. It's a big change. Will change a lot of the dynamics in relation to Walmart advertising. So second price auction, you essentially pay a penny more than the next closest advertiser, assuming that you're the top bidder. And so with that, it's largely dependent on upward pressure coming from competitors.
Yeah.
So, theoretically, there is the opportunity for some advertisers to gain efficiencies where perhaps they might have been overpaying previously. But in reality, the behavior of these advertisers is typically, given enough density, going to mean that prices will keep escalating and it's going to become more and more competitive within that second price auction. And so with that, for brands, advertisers, sellers even, to be able to gain greater efficiency with their ad spend, they're going to have to rely on technologies like Downstream, for example, that can begin to seek efficiencies at scale.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Connor, what are some of the biggest challenges that brands face advertising on Walmart today, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. It's a hot topic these days. So, it's not too dissimilar from the big challenges that these brands face advertising on Amazon.
Okay.
The primary one being scale. Brands have these massive catalogs. I've referenced Procter & Gamble as an example before. Over 10,000 ASINs on Amazon, similar size catalog on Walmart, which is just a massive catalog to have to advertise on a retail platform. Then two, like Amazon, Walmart is a highly dynamic advertising ecosystem. Each product has fluctuating pricing, inventory, all of the other components and variables that go into your individual SKU being listed on the platform. And each of those have to be accounted for, in some instances, negative impacts mitigated, because they will all factor into the performance of your advertising. And then three, it's just impossible to make all the necessary changes to be able to gain efficiency and be competitive on their platform manually. And so to do that effectively really does require that you engage a technology provider. And so, to accomplish this, it's really, starting with your business objectives, understanding what those are, defining your KPIs, and then finding partners, whether it be managed service provider, whether it be a technology provider like Downstream, or both, to ensure that you're really approaching Walmart advertising on the best footing.
Okay, so today a lot of advertisers are seeking greater investment efficiency on Walmart, like they would on Amazon as well. And most brands then will think of the ROAS and ACoS as their main KPIs for that. Do you believe that's the best way of measuring success, looking at your ROAS and ACoS, or are there more factors brands should consider?
Yeah, it's a pretty common question. And I think we need to be honest that, ROAS or ACoS, which is really just the inverse of ROAS, is an imperfect metric. It's highly variable by category. It's highly variable by tactic. And it's also not always the best KPI to be focused on, because that's largely dictated by your business objectives. So, whatever metric it is that advertisers are using as a North Star really should be determined by your business objectives. And generally, there's not just one business objective for the entire business. Generally, you've got secondary and tertiary objectives as you kind of segment out your business lines, and thus you have KPIs that you're trying to focus on. So, my advice would really be to get more granular in identifying what those objectives are for not only your e-commerce business, but then the different lines of business and even down to your individual tactics. Because, comparing non-branded ROAS versus your branded ROAS versus competitive ROAS, those are going to vary widely, and they should, because if someone's coming in and searching your branded terms, there's a good chance they were looking for your products anyway. So you're more likely to convert. Versus if you're bidding on competitive terms, that's a very incremental sale, but it's a hard one to make. And so your ROAS is likely to be much lower. So it's really about defining those different business objectives and then aligning with KPIs that help you ensure that you're pointed towards that objective. And so, for that, Downstream provides a suite of automation tools that kind of follow along the entire spectrum of more hands on the wheel to more hands off the wheel, depending how engaged an advertiser wants to be in managing the day-to-day activities of their advertising. And these automations allow brands to focus on their individual KPIs that they really want to use as a North Star to evaluate performance and drive towards. So at the end of the day, these Downstream capabilities allow for our customers, advertisers, to be able to focus on the goals, whether it be ROAS or some other KPI, and drive towards it and ultimately accomplish their business objectives.
What are some other KPIs outside of ROAS that you say you think a brand should consider?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you some examples. So, like, if for example, you're selling razor systems, right? You're focused more on LTV, lifetime value, right? Because it's not about the individual transaction of selling Jake this razor system. It's about the fact that you buy the razor system and then we sell you refills and cartridges for the next 3 to 5 years. Right. And there's a variety of different brands out there who use that kind of a business model, whether it be like a water pitcher where they're selling you the refill filters, a whole host of them out there. So lifetime value, that's a big one. But then also focusing on metrics that might not be packaged up as neatly within your advertising reporting. So looking towards things like market share to see how much incremental sales you're potentially driving. And that's going to generally be a more directional kind of metric, but it's going to be the best indication of the ROI that you're driving to your total business.
Interesting. Are there ways to measure these KPIs on the Walmart platform itself, or is that one of the main reasons why Downstream is able to help brands measure those KPIs?
Yeah, glad you asked. So, I mean, some of that data is available through the Walmart Advertising Console. And then there's some additional data views that are available through Downstream. Also, some additional integrations with like your Walmart retail data, which can provide you a little bit cleaner picture and allow you to sort of close the loop by viewing all of that data through a single pane of glass. So yes and no. But Downstream is certainly going to provide you the most complete picture, putting it all at your fingertips through a single pane of glass.
All right, so I wanted to ask you a question here, but loop in a stat from our latest Walmart advertising report. Over 80% of brands said they are still struggling with their supply chain issues. Connor, what are the best ways that brands now can mitigate around or navigate their issues when it comes to the supply chain challenges?
Yeah, that's a highly relevant question these days for sure. It really comes down to making sure that you've done the preparation up front. So it's evaluating your business to understand what are the triggers you're going to use to understand when you potentially have a disruption in your supply, understanding what actions you're going to take, and then ensuring that the lines of communication and the data is properly disseminated amongst all stakeholders and decision makers. So what I mean by that is having a clear understanding of your inventory position, your weeks of cover based on historical consumer demand. And if you have the capability, even factoring in supply chain and lead time to even go further upstream to understand just how far back this supply chain disruption may fall. And then, making the decisions ahead of time about if we are running into a supply chain disruption with one of our hero SKUs that we're promoting, what is the secondary, tertiary, et cetera, products that we're going to pivot towards to begin promoting, and then making sure that this is communicated and disseminated amongst all members of the team so that they understand that when we hit, X weeks of cover, we're going to pivot to Y SKU, and that all of your team has that data in front of them. They have the visibility, and they're able to call that audible when the time comes.
Awesome. All right, Connor, now this is the segment in the video where we're going to ask you for your top Walmart advertising predictions in the future.
I would anticipate that Walmart is going to continue to explore how they can leverage their brick and mortar presence to provide a more omni-channel view to the advertiser. This was something pretty novel that they did when they released their retail media offering, in that you could see some attribution back to the brick and mortar consumer. And being that that's such a differentiator for them, especially versus Amazon, who just doesn't have as significant of a brick and mortar footprint, I would anticipate that this is an area where they're going to continue to invest, explore, iterate. So that's one that I'm really curious to see how they leverage that brick and mortar footprint and continue to iterate there.
Awesome.
And then two, over the top television or OTT, I think, we're all really curious to see what happens in this space. Amazon's been making big investments here. It's clearly an opportunity for retail media in general to be able to put product ads in front of you while you're watching television. Very in context, relevant, being able to serve up products that they know you've either looked at or bought previously as more of a helpful reminder rather than an obnoxious distraction while you're watching television.
Right.
And allow you to purchase right there without context switching. So very curious to see where they go with that. And then with their DSP product, they've got this existing partnership with the Trade Desk. How does that proceed? What other DSP capabilities do they open up? Does this become Walmart owned and operated at some point, or they keep that partnership going? Yeah, very curious to see where the DSP goes and what they do with that. I would anticipate that we see them invest heavily there. I would anticipate that that does ultimately become Walmart owned and operated, similar to the way that Amazon's has been.
Awesome. Those are great predictions. I do hope you gained a ton of value from this webinar. Connor, first off, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it.
A lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.